Okay, that's a tic-tac-toe game, 3 cross 3, and this is our imported packages for the GUI. And in this class named tic-tac-toe frame, this extends from GFrame. This class creates our frame. In there I create a boolean named game over and set it initially false because games just started, not false. In there I created a char named turn and set it initially x because player x is the one who will always start the first. And for a tic-tac-toe game we must create a two-dimensional array. I created a two-dimensional array and named it as square because it looked like a square, and I set it 3 to 3. And in there I created a label named status and set it initially it's player x turn, but it will change when it's player o's turn. It will show the status of the game. In this constructor method I created a object named gameboard from gpanel. I created a panel named gameboard, and with grid layout methods I set 3 row 3 columns, and these two parameters is between those columns and rows for our gameboard. In this two loop I added my two-dimensional array to my gameboard, and in there I set a border to my status label and set its color as black and thickness as 1. Let me show you. This is our status label. Its color is also black, and in there I set border to my game board and set its color as red and thickness as 1. You can change it, but I think it looks better like this. And I added my game board to the center of this GUI in this method, and I added my status to the north side of the GUI in this method. In this boolean method named isFull, this method checks whether the game board is full. There's a for loop, and this loop checks every square, and if there is an empty square it returns false because that means our game board is not full, and if there is not any empty square it returns true because that means our game board is full. In this boolean is won method. This method takes char token from the user. Token is if it's your player x turn, token is x, and if it's player o's turn, token is o. In this for loop checks the rows. Every row starts with first row and goes first column, second column, third column. Checks every rows, and if one of these rows is full with token, full with x or o, it turns true because that means if this rows full with the same token, that means x or o won the game. And this checks the columns. Starts from first column, second column, third column, and if first or second or third column full with token, x or o, it returns true because that means x or o won the game. It checks the game board as diagonal, starts from first row and first column and goes like this. And if it's full with x or o, it returns true because that means x or o won the game. This also checks the game board diagonal too, but starts from here, and if it's full with x or o, it returns true. If those are not full, it returns false because no one has won the game. In this class named square, this class extends from gpanel, defines a square in our game board. In there I created a char named token and set it initially empty. In this constructor method I set borders to all of my squares and set those colors as red and thickness as 1. And in there I added mouse listener because when we click those squares something will happen. And those are our getter setter methods. Getter methods gets token of the square x or o, and setter methods gets parameter and sets it as token and prints it. If it's o turn, it gets o and sets token as o and repaints o to the square. If we delete this repaint method, when we click the square probably we won't see any x or o, as you can see. Let me call it back. In this overwrite method named paint component, this method override it from gpanel and paints x and o, and in there I called this method again. If I don't this called method again, when we click this square, something weird happens like this. As you can see, I must call it in there if statements. If our token is x, I mean if it's x turn, we must print an x to the square. And in there I created an object from dimension class and used get size method to get size of every square, and in there I draw a line, and in there I draw the second line, and with these two things I draw a tool line, and it looks like just an X. If I delete this and when we clicked, it will just draw one line, not X, as you can see. Else, in this if statements, if it's user O's turn, we must put O to the square, and in there we put O to the square. In this class name mouse, this class extends from mouse adapter and overrided. There's an overrided function names mouse clicked. In there I determined what will happen when we click those squares. If our game is already over, it will terminate it, nothing will happen. Let me show you like this. Let's make the game over. Okay, game is over. When we click, nothing happens, as you can see. And in there, if square is empty and the game is not over, when user clicks, it will just paint empty, nothing in this if statement, and it sets token as turn. In this if statement, if it's X or O's turn and X or O has won the game, it returns true and sets our status label as X or O has won the game and game over, and sets turn value as empty because game is over. If user still wants to click when the game is over, it will just click empty, not X or O, and sets game over as true because game is over. And in there, if our game board is full but the game is not over, that means game is tie. It says status label as tie, game is over, and sets turn value as empty and sets game over as true because game is over. And if there is if no one wins the game and there is not game over situation, in this if statement, if it's X turn, it's switched to O's turn, and if it's O's turn, it's switched to X turn, and in status label it says that if it's X or O's turn, as you can see. Let me show you. O's turn, X turn, O's turn, X turn, but game is not finished. Okay, there is our class and our main methods. In there, I just imported Java Swing Frame because there will be just our frame, and this class named tic-tac-toe, and I created an object from this class in there and named tic-tac-toe2, and in there I set my frame's name and my GUI's name as the best tic-tac-toe game ever, and in there I set its size, and in there I set its visibility as true. If I don't set it, and when we run the code there, we won't see the GUI probably. As you can see, we don't see the GUI. We must set its visibility as true to see the GUI, and that's all. Let's test our tic-tac-toe game. Let's test as X wins first. X won, nothing happens, it's working. And let's win as O first. Okay, O won, nothing happens, it's working. And let's make the game tie now. Okay, trying O, and it takes a little bit time, but it's working. I tested it several times, and that's the project. Thank you for listening to me.